forward. I mean, you can put your money in the market and it might do better.
Mm-hmm.
It very well could. Long term, will it do better? Maybe, maybe not. But how much can you enjoy those stocks or that mutual fund? You know, you can pull it up on your online account and see that it's growing, and that's exciting.
Yeah.
But it's not tangible. You can't experience it like you can a piece of land. It's not a bad time to sell, especially if you've owned the property for a while, because you've built equity. You know, there's definitely bad times to try to flip a place. You know, buy a place, clean it up, and flip it. There's definitely bad times to do that. You know, what I tell most people, if you've owned it more than about 5 years, you know, you're going to come out okay. Then you don't go buy a new truck and then just completely destroy it right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
You don't buy a house and just leave the doors open and let it freeze in the winter and have water leaks everywhere. So it's the same with land. You know, if you're going to own it, let's make it be what it can be and have some return for you and conserve it and so you have something to show for it at the end of the day. You know, it's an asset. It's not a liability. So don't treat it like a liability.
Yeah.
Welcome to the Landowner Insider, the podcast for Texas landowners who want to stay up to date with current events shaping our state. Here we talk about issues that actually impact your Texas lands, markets, water, wildlife, policy, and the decisions that are shaping our state. I'm your host, Kasey Mock with the Mock Ranches Group. And in each episode, we sit down with the people who are shaping the future of Texas. We're not afraid to ask the hard questions. This is the Landowner Insider podcast presented by the Mock Ranches Group.
Josh, how far is it from Comanche to Stephenville? 25 miles?
It's about 40 minutes by the time you factor in traffic to get around this town.
That's a good ranch broker's answer. I asked you in miles and you answered in minutes.
Well, I guess when you got to be somewhere, it's more about how long it takes than how far it is.
How far between feed stores and Ford House?
Yeah.
That's the real answer. So Josh deals in Comanche, Texas, just about 25 miles west of us here, southwest of Stephenville, Texas.
Yeah.
Josh and I known each other, about 7 years? 6-7 years?
Man, we've been working together almost that long. So a little bit longer than that even.
Okay.
Time flies when you're having fun, right?
Yeah, I moved back to Stephenville 4 years ago, and I thought I'd get to see Josh a lot, but
40 minutes is a long ways.
40 minutes, as turns out, 40 minutes is a long ways. So if you've been through Comanche, Texas, on the highway there on 67 coming through Comanche, you'll see Josh Deal's marquee sign right there, the Mock Ranch's office, across from the Allsup's or the Mexican food place.
Kind of both.
Yeah, between the Allsup's
by
and
the
the Mexican
Exxon
cafeteria.
station and the Junior's burritos.
Yeah, best place to get burritos, breakfast
Guaranteed.
burritos. How do you define, Josh? We're going to kick this off with a heavy question. How do you define a breakfast burrito compared to a breakfast taco?
It's got to be the size of it, right? That's my opinion.
I grew up in South Texas, and we had breakfast tacos almost every morning. Had taco trucks, taco trailers. Everybody in North Texas calls them burritos.
I think tacos, you need more than one probably. Whereas a burrito, if you're eating more than one, you probably shouldn't. That's my opinion.
I want you to comment. If you're listening to this, you share in the comments. How do you define a breakfast taco compared to a breakfast burrito? That's your homework. You can comment on Facebook too. Breakfast taco, breakfast burrito. On to land. Josh has worked with us 7 years. And in that time, not only is Josh seriously, one of the best individual men I've ever met. Godly man, loves his family, very professional, expert in range management, plan identification. If I have a ranch management question or a range question or a pond, lake, watershed question, Josh is always my first call. And so I appreciate that about you very much. Where'd you learn that?
I spent just about 12 years working for the NRCS, the Natural Resources Conservation Service. That's a part of USDA.
Federal agency.
Yeah, federal agency, but non-regulatory, emphasize that. Okay. Your tax dollars pay for it, but 100% voluntary. We worked with private landowners of all sizes and as far as property walks of life, goals for the property from your seasoned multi-generational rancher to brand new to the country, move from the city, want to own a farm. Where do we begin?
Yeah.
And so a lot of diversity there. And then, the primary direction that our NRCS works with is resource concerns. And you're like, well, what does that mean? Well, what that means is erosion.
You have to define the natural resource to know what concerns it. So
yes. So we're not talking about necessarily just planting grass. Well, why do you want to plant grass? Well, because I have erosion. That's a resource concern. The soil is washing away, or if you're further west, the wind is blowing the soil away, and we want to hold it. We want to keep it.
NRCS was formerly the Soil and Water Conservation Service, right?
Yes, and before that, it was a soil erosion service. Going back far enough in time, was birthed out of the Dust Bowl.
Out of the Dust Bowl.
And just the massive loss of soil in the primarily western United States back during the Dust Bowl, of course, and has evolved from there into lots of other things. But always has been about improving the land in whatever capacity that is.
How many different ecoregions are there in Texas?
Oh, man. I would say there's in terms of NRCS, we would look at probably about 5, something like that. I mean, you've got East Texas, like the Piney Woods. You've got your South Texas brushland. You've got far West Texas, of course. You've got the Panhandle, and kind of it's maybe a little bit cultural, not just strictly geographical, but the practices that go with that region. North Texas, for instance, is big cow country.
Yeah.
And so even like your farming practices a lot of times are centered around livestock. You're growing a lot of wheat, for instance, to graze yearlings and that kind of thing.
Let me give you the AI answer. According to Texas Parks and Wildlife. So it's Texas Parks and Wildlife. It does cite, I think AgriLife Extension follows this too. I used the ecoregions when I was in wildlife management because in every ecoregion, your minimum intensities are different for your wildlife categories, for your 1D1 open space valuation, but it says there's 12.
Yeah.
South Texas brushland, Edwards Plateau, coastal prairies, West Gulf Coast plains, Blackland Prairie, that's going to be like the east side of the I-35 corridor. Cross Timbers, which is where we are right now. We're here in the Cross Timbers where we're at sitting today. Rolling Plains, that's up in the quail country, North Texas quail country. Pecos and Staked Plains, Chihuahuan Desert, that's far west Texas. The Western High Plains, Southwestern Tribelands, I'm not familiar with that one, and the Central Great Plains. Those are the 12 ecoregions in the state. Mm-hmm. It wasn't a quiz.
Well, I failed it.
What makes you work predominantly in North Texas?
Sure.
Have truck will travel, but predominantly right here in North Texas and 5 or 6 counties around here, and have had a really great career. And I'm real excited about what's to come. But what's unique right here in North Texas, Josh? We've got an opportunity here to speak directly there. So what's unique about North Texas right here from a landowner's perspective?
I would say so much diversity, even just within a single property, but from one end of one county, from the south end of Comanche County, for instance, to the north end of Comanche County is so different.
Very different.
Because we're transitioning out of the hill country into that North Texas rolling plains, and we have very shallow soils, high slope with lots of live oak and juniper. We also have 0 to 1% slope, sandy soil with with post oak forest, basically.
Yeah. Peanut ground.
Old peanut ground for sure. And then we have, some really productive farmland. We have some areas with phenomenal groundwater. We have some areas with not much groundwater. And so that's what's kind of interesting about the area, and we've historically been just far enough west of DFW, northwest of Austin, that Comanche County, for instance, kind of didn't get caught up in the development and fragmentation and recreational ranch sprawl, if you will.
You're just over that 2 hour mark.
Yes,
you find that recreational users, they stop using them as much if they're past 2 hours from home. That's what I've seen.
Sure. And so we get a kind of buyer that is really more concerned about how much acreage they can acquire. Mm-hmm. And so it's important to them. They could push out a little further and get more for their money as far as acreage. And
you start to find that same buyer like Mills County.
Certainly.
I think, Mills County, really around Lomita, if you're coming, which is Lampasas County. But if you really get to Lomita, which Lomita's got some affordability issues today, I think. For no more groundwaters there and different issues, I think it's got some affordability issues. But you started finding that buyer in Lomita, moving up through Mills County, Comanche County, Brown County.
Parts of Hamilton County.
County.
And on into Eastland County.
Yeah. You get much further west, though, and the brush starts and the trees start shrinking because if you just look at an aerial map, you start to cross the brown line. You get much further west, you start to cross the brown line, which is just where rainfall starts to taper off and the brush gets thinner and shorter.
Sure. Yeah, we're about 29 to 30 inches around here, which probably just means we're somewhere between 20 inches and 40 inches. I don't know that there's very many years where we're actually at 29 inches, but
flood or drought.
You push west of about 26 inches or so, and you start to see some, fewer than 26 inches of rain can start to have an effect, and you're down to a lot fewer hardwoods, and so.
In your role as an advisor, in your role as a fiduciary, also a land manager, you've used the word productive more than a half dozen times already.
Sure.
So what separates, in your eyes, a productive piece of ground from just a pretty place?
Well, and I should probably put an asterisk next to that productive, because there's some people further west that would turn their nose up and say, I've got a perfectly productive place in near Ballinger or San Angelo or wherever. And honestly, what I would classify a productive place as is something that is reaching its potential. There's nothing wrong with shortgrass prairie that only produces 2,500 pounds of forage per acre. If that's what it can do, then let's just make it what it can be and be happy with that and manage for it and, stock livestock appropriately. But generally speaking, as far as productive, people want a place that they can put a few cows on, and and I say a few, 20 cows, say, a herd that's worth really having and managing, and because it's the same amount of work whether you have 5 cows or 20, right?
A 20 cow herd today's worth.
A 20 cow herd today's worth a lot of money.
A lot of money.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, maybe those.
A special sale at Jordan's in San Saba, there was some select pairs brought $7,100. Morgan Willis in our Mason office just texted us that about 30 minutes ago, that she got the sale report from Jordan Cattle Auction, and that would have been the week. This is February 27th, so it would have been, I don't know when they sold them.
Maybe Saturday.
Yeah, maybe Saturday, just a couple of days ago, that those select pairs brought $7,100 a pair.
I can remember when they brought 71 cents a pound.
Yes, I can too. I can too. What's happening right now, Josh, in the North Texas ranch market? What trends are you seeing? Is it softening? Is it strong? What trends are you seeing in North Texas at the moment?
It's a pretty good market right now. We've seen a lot of activity, and so we're doing this interview right at the end of February, and historically we're coming out of kind of a slow time of year. Generally, January, February, people are trying to plan their year. They're taking care of their tax things they need to do for their accountant for the prior year, and they just got a lot of stuff going on, and maybe looking at a ranch is not a priority necessarily, but we had a really good January and February, new listings, new buyers, putting stuff under contract. And man, and other brokers I've talked to, that's not exclusive to me or this team, but I've seen that quite a bit. And, I think people are just ready to get back in the game. There's been so much uncertainty and volatility, going back to 2020, and things got out of control good. And then, I don't want to say they crashed, but they definitely plateaued and cooled off. And I think buyers and sellers are starting to come together with their expectations. Maybe, there for a while we saw sellers with high expectations that buyers met, and then those expectations stayed high, and buyers said, we're not going to do that. And a lot of it's kind of coming back into check, I feel like, and just to a good normal year in a lot of ways. But yeah, a lot of activity so far.
In North Texas right now, where do you think the opportunity is for buyers? Is it big tracks, small tracks, development deals, rec stuff?
Oh man, it depends, right? Like that's not a cop out, but it depends where you are. If you're in Erath County or you're in Parker County, man, I don't know if can the development market ever cool off right now? It's
tough.
Man, it's going strong. Comanche County, we've seen a little bit of a decline. There was a lot of that development rush post-COVID, and the market really got flooded. And you're seeing a lot of those tracks coming back on the market. There was kind of a mob mentality that picked up some of those tracks, and quite honestly, some buyers who probably walked into some stuff not knowing what they were getting into, and just the cost to hold that piece of property, to do things with that piece of property, from clearing brush, building fences, putting in roads, getting utilities, all of those things really start to add up. And that, especially on these smaller tracks, and that $250,000 purchase was just the beginning. And you could spend another $100,000 in a heartbeat just to get it to where you could have a house and live on the property. And that was maybe something people weren't prepared for. And so a lot of that stuff's coming back to market, and some of those, that outer, right outside that 2-hour range on the smaller tracks. The bigger tracks are starting to move for sure. Seeing a lot of activity there. And there again, I think it's just people ready to get back in the market. Interest rates are down a little bit, getting into range of, well within long-term averages, and people just realize this is the market we're going to do business in.
Yeah. What is the actual cost of owning a 200-acre place in North Texas?
Depends what you start with and where you want to go. If you like a brushy place and you just want to hunt it a little bit on the weekends, and you need a few open spots to put a feeder and a place to park a camper, and you've got a wildlife valuation on the property, so your property taxes are not an issue, and it doesn't have to be too bad. But if you're wanting to improve a property and intensively graze it for livestock, and it's not currently in a turnkey good position, well, you could spend several $100s an acre very quickly. So yeah, that's a challenge. You really just can't put a number on it.
Yeah, but I do think there's a lot of costs that buyers don't calculate, probably because they're not advised on the front end. The average land broker, land agent, whether they don't know or don't say, a lot of buyers go into these ranch transactions, smaller ranch transactions especially, that are not, production agriculture operations, not active operations. They go into these tracts without a full understanding of what it's going to cost them to own it. And I'm not talking about property taxes. Those are public record. And the purchase price and interest rates, all that can be factored. Sure. But just the cost of stewarding a piece of ground that doesn't produce much cash flow, little to no cash flow. Yeah, they do come with a great cost of holding those. And a lot of your financial advisors would tell you that looks more like a liability in your balance sheet than an asset.
It's a great spot to, it's a great spot to balance out.
Yeah, it is.
No doubt. Well, and that's one thing that's unfortunately come out of COVID, or I don't know what you want to call it, but just the cost of doing things.
Yeah.
It used to be, you could get a D6 dozer, a big machine that can sure do some work, and a good operator for $110 an hour all day long. And man, they could
Not now.
They could get a lot done. Not now. Yeah, no, it'd be almost twice that.
Yeah.
And, cost to build a house has gone up 40%.
Yeah. $100 a foot up.
Yeah. I mean, you used to be able to build a really nice house. I've, built some, and $130 a square foot, built a nice place. Not fancy, but a good solid house, with granite countertops and, nice stuff.
Yeah.
Now that house is over 200 easily.
Yeah.
I mean, heck, a pickup. Look how much a pickup's gone up. You could buy a nice truck a diesel pickup for less than $60,000 6 years ago.
Land has followed the same trend.
Yes.
So in your career over the last 7 years, what have land prices done in Comanche County, let's say?
Oh, they've doubled. They've doubled just about. I mean, I can remember an early transaction I did. It was 1,000 acres with a nice house on it. It was an older house, but it had been redone. It was a nice house, good enough for anybody, and sold it for $3 million. And that would be, that'd be a $5+ million place these days.
Yeah,
for sure.
Wish you would have bought more of it. That's what I always tell my clients. Yeah. What's it going to do? And I tell them, I don't know, but 10 years ago, I wish I would have bought more of it. Mm-hmm. All I could have afforded and borrowed on the rest.
Well, we've talked about this before. I mean, you can put your money in the market and it might do better. Mm-hmm. It very well could. Long term, will it do better? Maybe, maybe not. But how much can you enjoy those stocks or that mutual fund? You can pull it up on your online account and see that it's growing, and that's exciting. Yeah. But it's not tangible. You can't experience it like you can a piece of land, and you don't have to worry about that piece of land ever going to zero either.
Yeah. It's hard to raise good kids on a mutual fund.
Very true.
It's hard to raise good kids and pour into your grandkids in a crypto fund. Now, those things can help you buy a ranch, but I think it depends on what your goal is. If your goal is to create a legacy for your family, one that they're going to preserve and one that they're going to remember, and a legacy that they're going to try to carry on, I believe that's where land fits into a portfolio very, very well. And I also believe the kind of client that we work for a lot, especially on the buy side, if they acquire a piece of Texas dirt, they go buy a ranch, I think that does something to them also, where it puts pressure on their business to go make a little more money to pay for that, grow their business subsequently. And what I've seen is most of those clients I've worked with over my career, they end up in about the same place financially anyway. They've just gone and found a way they're happy. Their family enjoys it. They found a way to grow their business. They've leveraged that ranch for relationships. And at the end of the day, I've never met one of them that says, I wish I would have spent less time at the ranch.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you touched on a couple things there. One, everybody needs a goal, right? And so maybe buying that piece of property or continuing to be able to pay for that piece of property and improve that property, there's your goal right there. And then you've got the kind of untangible, subjective value of it, of being able to enjoy it and be outside, and we see that with so many buyers. How many of them come out and said, I'm looking in Erath County, or I'm looking in Comanche County, or wherever it was, because my granddad had a place out here 30 years ago when I was a kid, or my uncle. And, some of those people will say they only came to it 2 or 3, 4 times total. It wasn't like they came out once a month for 20 years, but they've got vivid memories of being on that property, being outside, just enjoying God's creation, right? And that's stuck with them for 30 years maybe. And in the back of their head, they've always thought, I need to buy a piece of that for myself because we don't have that piece anymore for whatever reason. And I just need that. There's just an internal feeling of need to be outside and breathe fresh air and not sit on your butt in front of a computer all day. Yeah, I mean, that may be what you have to do to pay for it, but there's a longing there. Yeah,
you and I are no different than that glass of water. Spiritually, Our willpower, our endurance is no different than that glass of water. If you take out of it every day without putting something back, at some point it gets empty. And nothing will replenish you like getting outside.
Well, we have a unique experience, and I saw this within RCS also, that our job is so split between, pounding the keyboard and then logging the miles in a truck, but then also being on so many different places. And, I know you'll agree with me before I even ask this question, but, the days we have to spend in front of the computer all day, they're terrible, aren't they? I mean, they're a necessary evil.
Nobody got into real estate and said, you know what I want to do? I want to be a ranch broker so that I can sit in front of a computer and answer title questions and deal with other people's problems and timelines and life issues and finances and have emails run my schedule. Mm-hmm. Why'd they want to get into the ranch business?
Because they wanted to ride around on a Ranger all day.
Yeah, ride around on a side-by-side all day and look at the Instagram reels and see deer and horses and cows and sunsets and sunrises and see the things that everybody else dreams about.
Sure.
But that's a pretty small part of the job.
Unfortunately.
Yep.
We always catch heck about that from people. Must be nice to just ride around and look at ranches all day.
Yeah.
It is very nice. But unfortunately, it's only 25% of our job, it feels like.
I think our job's a lot like that Brad Paisley song. So much cooler online.
Man, that's the truth. That's funny. I hadn't thought about that. Oh, man.
So if you own a piece of ground right now, speaking to a North Texas landowner, if you own a piece of ground right now in North Texas, is this a market to look at selling? Or is this a market to get a valuation on your place and see where you're at?
It's not a bad time to sell, but I don't think if you've got realistic expectations, there's rarely a bad time to sell. There's rarely a bad time to go to market. I mean, there's things that happen, of course, but especially if you've owned the property for a while because you've built equity, there's definitely bad times to try to flip a place, buy a place, clean it up and flip it. There's definitely bad times to do that. But what I tell most people, if you've owned it more than about 5 years, you're going to come out okay.
Yeah.
Right.
It's pretty rare that we stay in a recession trough that long.
Sure.
If you look at most real estate cycles, they're about 10 years long from top to top or bottom to bottom, however you look at that. So market's at its peak. You don't know it's at the bottom until it's already starting to come back up, gets to a peak again, shifts again. Over time, they've gone up about 6% annually, land prices across the state of Texas, about 6% annually. So on that way up, you've got those peaks and valleys and troughs. I tell my clients the same thing. If they're buying a ranch to flip, which some do, we don't represent that many flippers, but some do. But I tell every one of them the exact same thing. If you buy it, make sure you're comfortable owning it and you'd be happy to own it for 5 years. And then I think we've got a good investment here. Mm-hmm. If you want to buy it and exit in 18 months, that could be risky.
Sure. Well,
to get a big return.
Yeah, and those flippers, they have to get it right on the buy side, of course, or it just doesn't work.
Correct.
But I would say there's so much more to it than just transactional. You just can't look at it from strictly the dollar side of things. Mm-hmm. When you're looking at farm and ranch property, it's so much different than commercial or multifamily or something like that. I mean, it's just purely for income purposes, to create some kind of income for you and your family or business or whatever it is. And farm and ranch land is just so different. And so you've got to weigh, what kind of intangible value are you getting out of the property while you own it? What are you going to lose when you sell it? Are you wanting to sell it because you want to go to something bigger or something different? Or are you wanting to just get out of farm and ranch ownership altogether? And so it's, and then you've got all kinds of tax implications with all of those things. And, there's just so many things to think through when you decide to sell a place. And it's always, I feel like it's always a fine line for us to walk when somebody starts talking about selling a place, because there's been times I've almost talked people out of it.
Yeah.
just strictly from the standpoint of, have you considered this? Have you considered that? What is your plan? You've owned this place 25 years. Do you realize that you're going to have a long-term capital gain of, maybe $3,000 or $4,000 an acre that then you have to pay taxes on? What are you going to do with that money? Are you willing to give that 15% to the IRS, or what is your exit strategy? And a lot of times that'll give people pause, and they got to kind of figure out a plan of how to make all this work.
You and I talked for like your first 2 to 3 years. We had this conversation pretty regularly. You would say, I'm not a very good salesman.
I came into real estate thinking the first thing about a salesman is just know your product, right? Yeah. And I know land, so I'll be fine.
Yeah.
That's not true.
Well,
to some extent.
But I think, Josh, that mentality right there is what makes you so good at what you do, because what's the number one way you earn trust with your clients?
Just being honest.
Yeah.
Just being honest.
And honesty, more times than not, is telling them why they shouldn't do it. I think so many salespeople sniff blood in the water and they run to it and they try to build on that and create urgency and create all these reasons why you should do it without ever asking, is this the right time? But you really earn trust when you advise somebody on maybe why they shouldn't do it. Here are considerations before you make this decision. Because for our clients, a lot of times this is the largest financial transaction they'll ever make.
Sure.
It's generational. It's got legacy implications. It's not only a big financial transaction, but it's a big family decision too. And if we can advise them maybe on the considerations and why they shouldn't do it, I think you immediately earn trust.
Oh, 100%. I tell a lot of people, I need to get paid next year just like I need to get paid this year. So if this isn't the right time for you, that's no problem. Let's, and there's ways to go about that too. We can keep it as a pocket listing and just kind of keep it in the back of our head, and maybe the right opportunity does present itself during that time period with the right terms, where it could work. But maybe it is next year, because you've got to really sit down with your wealth manager and your accountant and figure out what's the next step.
Yeah. In North Texas, Josh, what's actually driving values in the ranch market today?
For the most part, it's going to just be what I'm going to call absentee recreational buyer, and just their demand for a piece of property. We've still got your production, agriculture, farmer, cow-calf producer, whatever it might be, but they are probably at the mercy of that recreational buyer. We're primarily a luxury real estate business. Very few of these transactions are something that they have to do. They're always fun when somebody is purchasing to expand, their family operation.
Mm-hmm.
They've been successful enough and got the ability to do that. But those are kind of few and far between. Majority of folks are wanting that recreational property. And so there's just so many factors there. We've already kind of touched on some of that with just affordability in the market and interest rates.
Are most of those buyers coming out of DFW?
They're coming out of a metropolitan area.
Okay.
Let's put it that way.
You're close enough to capture some from Midland, Odessa, too.
We catch some Midland, Odessa, no doubt about it. We catch some Austin, Waco, because we're Comanche County, for instance, we're 2 hours from everything, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
So there again, those people pushing out kind of to their limits a little bit, but wanting more acreage.
You ever seen Oh Brother, Where Art Thou?
Yeah.
George Clooney?
Yeah.
He says, this place is a damn geographical oddity. 2 hours from everywhere.
I guess you remembered that quote better. Have to put that on a billboard.
Well, we talk about value drivers, specifically like what on a piece of ground are you looking for? Is it ponds, creeks, live water, healthy pasture range, cross fences? What's driving the value here, property specific?
So water is always a plus. Mm-hmm. We don't have the live water like the hill country. We've got we've got some places with some springs and some places that will hold pools of water, but
don't have the Guadalupe
we
River.
don't have the Guadalupe or the Frio, right? But water's always big. And so we kind of leaned more towards surface water, a good body of water. It doesn't have to be a 20-acre lake, but something, an acre or two is really a plus that you can get out maybe, and grandkids can kick a kayak or a canoe out there and fish around a little bit.
That is
that's
something
always a
really
plus.
unique right here in this part of Texas. It seems like there's a lot of those old soil and water conservation reservoirs, bunch of lakes. I mean, there's far more ranches right here in this part of the state have a private lake than, say, west and south of here.
Sure.
Yeah.
And we're kind of, part of that's simply because of the rainfall. It's hard to fill a big lake when you get 15, you can't do it when you get 15 inches of rain a year, and so we've got that luxury.
Can't hardly
here.
make one hold water in the rocks.
No. And that's an interesting topic there all the way around, of course. Anybody can get a bulldozer and dig a hole. Doesn't mean it's going to turn into anything more than a trash. If you do it wrong, it's just a expensive trash pit or hog wallow.
Yeah.
But so water is key, and they're quality water, something that you can rely on year round. Clean places always do well. Something that somebody can just slide right into, because a lot of these recreational buyers, they don't have a background in any kind of management, and they don't know their way around equipment and some of those things. They've been successful in whatever they were successful in. They're intelligent people. I'm not discounting that, but their experience is not in ranch management. It's not in agricultural production. And so something that they can slide into turnkey is always a plus. They're willing to pay a premium for that.
How much premium? Tired place versus a turnkey improved place.
20%.
Yeah.
It'd be pretty easy, I would say,
So if you've got the free capital to put into your place to keep it improved and keep it clean, I think you'll get that out on the backside. You just got to be able to live without it in that gap of ownership, right? During that period of ownership, you just got to be able to live without it. So if I've got one ranch that I can, say it costs me $4,000 or $5,000 a year to own it, property taxes, and every now and then I've got to maintain a road and spray a little prickly pear, and I can do cut stump on some mesquites when they start growing up and do that pretty low key DIY. I may do that for $5,000 a year versus somebody else that may be able to put $20,000 a year into their place, keep it sharp, fences in good order, cleared roads, drive the perimeter, keep the pond dams from growing up. That $20,000 they're putting there, they're not earning interest on in the market every year, but I do think they get that back when they go to sell the ranch.
100%.
Yeah.
And they also get to enjoy the fruits of that labor while they own it.
Yeah.
And 20% might be a little low. I was kind of thinking some numbers in my head while you were talking, and I mean, it could be 30%.
Yeah, I think it could be.
Pretty easy. And then just fewer days on market.
Yeah.
There's lots of average places out there, right? There always are, always have been.
Hard to stand out in that market.
Yeah. You've got to create something, and
it almost becomes a pricing game.
Sure.
If you're one of a few, you've got leverage and you can create scarcity. If you're one of many, it really just becomes a pricing game.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got to do something to create some excitement about the property.
Yes, sir. That's right.
Yeah. And so if you don't have the features, you've got to accommodate for that some other way. Yeah. But, most people like a place that's fairly clean. I've been part of clearing of thousands of acres of brush, for instance, and I've never, ever heard a single person say, man, I wish we hadn't cleared all that brush. We did too much. I never heard that. Going back through all my years with NRCS, and like I said, we did thousands of acres of brush management. And
I think you can clear too much if you're a deer manager, maybe.
Maybe, but what
gosh,
I mean
on small acreage.
What I mean
large
by
acreage,
that,
it's hard to clear too much.
Yeah, what I mean by that, but you had that goal on the front side.
Yeah,
you didn't go in there. If you had a wildlife management goal from the beginning, then you never intended to clear 80-90% of the land, right? You knew, you had a strategic plan going
Yeah.
in, and you stuck with that, and it was good.
My in-laws have a place down around Lomita, between Lomita and San Saba. One of the pastures, they went in and cleared about 40% of the mesquite and bee brush and cat claw, and it was just really grown up. It wasn't good for cows because it was so thick. Well, they went in and cleared that, and they made their deer hunters mad because the deer numbers fell in half, Yeah. But it runs more cows, and they make more money on cows.
Right.
And the property value, not that they're sellers, but the property value would benefit from that project.
Well, and a lot of times that's one thing about this North Texas part of the world. You've got topography and you've got soil changes. You've got things that if you can just kind of follow what the land is giving you, you create those natural mosaics that, you're clearing brush from your most productive areas, for instance. And so you can drastically increase your grass production, which of course increases your profitability and your grazable acres and all of that. But you're still leaving your shallower areas, your riparian areas, you're leaving those in brush, and your wildlife really don't suffer from it. In fact, you may see more because you've just got more site opportunity just because the place is cleaner. You could see more than 40 yards in any one spot. And most of the deer in this part of the world are used to a lot of that kind of habitat anyway, and they're kind of edge animals to begin with. They like changes in habitat, and so it's always worked out well, and creates a place that just is as aesthetically pleasing as well.
Yeah. What about data centers in North Texas?
We talk about them way too much these days, it seems like. Data centers and transmission lines and solar farms, and man, there's so much of that going on right now, and it's so hard to know what's actually going to happen. There's people running around everywhere. We've never really had an oil boom in Comanche, for instance, and I'm not saying it's the same as that, but that's what it feels like a little bit. It's a topic of conversation everywhere.
It's going to create a boomtown effect in a lot of these little towns.
If they actually get built out. That's
Correct.
what nobody really understands. Are they actually even going to happen? Are these speculators buying places, trying to kind of entitle them, if you will, and get them ready to flip to the guy that's going to build it out? And they have power lined up. And, well, of course, in the State of the Union the other night, President Trump made a comment that these data centers, I believe it's where it was are going to have to be able to stand alone. And I may be misquoting that.
That'll slow things down. I didn't watch it.
It may not have, it may not have been the State of the Union. It may have been just in Texas. I can't remember who said it now, but it was earlier this week that comment was made that these data centers are going to have to be able to stand alone. And
did you watch it, Taylor?
I did not. I just saw clips.
I didn't watch it either. We were at a basketball game. But
yeah, we were out too.
Anyway, but yeah, lots going on. And then Encore, of course, is trying to put these 765 kV lines across Texas and create a big loop with some connecting pieces in there. And man, I've got a family place that it could potentially impact. We've got a listing it could impact. Yeah.
One of the routes comes through my place,
right through
where
your
we
front
live.
yard almost. Yeah. So, and they show up at the courthouse with a 3,500 page document and these big old maps, and just nobody knows. They talk about preferred routes, but then you hear about, folks fighting it, and I mean, everybody's fighting it. They got to pick something. They're not just going to change their mind and cancel the project, but we're still several months from knowing what's going to happen there. And, it makes people scared to even contract a place.
What are the impacts of a solar farm next door? I'm not asking environmental impacts, but what's the impact on value of a solar farm next door?
Well, it's really going to get down to just the sight of it, the visibility of it. How does it impact you? I mean, there's some solar farms, you don't see them until you're right there on them. Mm-hmm. And so it may not be that big a deal for your neighboring place, but I had an opportunity to list a place once, and that same family was contracted to put a solar farm in. And I said, I don't I don't know that we should even try to sell this right now because it's a beautiful place right up on a big bluff. But, you know, in the next 6 to 9 months, you're going to find out if this solar farm's coming in. And if it does, then where everybody's going to want to build their house on this piece of property we're trying to sell is going to look at 400 acres of solar panels, like right down below them, you know, and for all we know, the sun's going to reflect off of them and blind them while they're sitting on their back porch, you know? So that's kind of two extremes there. It can crater a deal and it might not have much impact at all. But I think on all of this stuff, the uncertainty is worse than the reality a lot of times.
Yeah.
You know?
The uncertainty around the transmission lines right now seems to be the big issue.
Sure.
There's so many places that are basically on lockdown. Buyers won't move on them because they're named in one of the 5 routes. There's 5 routes proposed that would come through Erath County. I'm not sure about Comanche, but the uncertainty is what's keeping things locked down because they don't fairly compensate you for the adverse effect on the entire piece of property.
For the life of the property, obviously.
Correct.
Forever, yeah.
Correct.
This episode is brought to you by the Mock Ranches Real Estate Group. At Mock Ranches, we specialize in representing buyers and sellers of farms, ranches, and recreational land across the state of Texas. Our team sold over $1.25 billion of Texas land, and we focus on helping landowners make smart decisions about their most valuable assets. If you're thinking about buying or selling, or simply want to understand the land markets better, get a hold of us at mockranches.com. Mock Ranches, Texas land represented right.
You might get 3 or 4 or 10 times fair market value for the area that they're directly impacting. And that's great for the moment, but that doesn't even begin to cover how it's going to affect the place for the next 100 years.
So how are you advising landowners that are looking at property that's in and around those routes?
Man, all you can do is just lay the facts out there. Just go find all the information you can about it and make sure they fully understand what it is and how it affects the place. And then you just really have to ultimately let them decide, you know. I mean, we bring information, you know, and we can, but it's not our decision to make, you know. All we can do is give them as much information as possible so they can make the best educated decision as possible because everybody's affected differently. Some people don't mind seeing transmission lines. You know, the listing I have right now that has one of the potential routes going across it. I've had probably 6 different showings on it lately, and 5 of those really did not seem too concerned. They were glad that nothing had been decided yet, so that if it did come across the place, they would have the ability to negotiate on it and receive the condemnation, you know, proceedings from it. But they were okay with it. Honestly, more okay than I thought they would be. But that doesn't mean there's not 20 that won't be interested in it.
Yeah.
You know, I guess what I've learned out of real estate more than anything is you can't predict human behavior. You know, you can sit there and look at a place and think this is the best place I've seen in a long time. They'd be crazy not to buy it.
Yeah.
But it doesn't do it for them. You just got to realize that and go on to the next one.
You worked with NRCS for 10 years, Josh. Here in Erath, Comanche County, there's several government programs available. NRCS, Farm Service Agency, FSA, the local Water Conservation Board. My question is, what improvements can be partially funded or cost shared for landowners that they're going to relate in value? What improvements can those landowners be looking at through those cost share programs that are going to translate into value to them?
So to kind of differentiate those entities just a little bit, so the NRCS and then Farm Service Agency are both federal. You know, they're in the same building. They're kind of a brother or sister agency under USDA. Farm Service Agency primarily deals in what I would kind of consider price support programs. You know, you can get what's coverage on your wheat crop, for instance, and if it doesn't rain, they'll pay you for your unrealized gain, basically, or your loss on the crop. There's some different things like that. And then they have some loan programs for younger operators, especially to try to help them get in the business. NRCS is more kind of like the State Soil and Water Conservation Board. They are very conservation related, and that gets back to resource concerns and, what is keeping this property from reaching its potential? What is creating a problem for the producer, the landowner on the property? Is it erosion? Is it you're not reaching production potential because of brush, or it's an old cropland field that's just kind of been left to go fallow, and so it's just an unproductive grasses that have come up over time on their own, and they're not very nutritious. They're low in protein. They're producing a fraction of what a good productive grass could produce. And so from there, then once you meet with those offices and put together kind of a plan, so what they would do is come out and look at the whole place, and you would tell them, so here's my goal. I want to, how many cows can I run on this place if it was in great condition? And NRCS could help you calculate based on historic numbers. They can look at your soil type and know historically this soil can grow this much forage, and you have this many acres of this soil and this many acres of this soil. So based on that, we have a stocking rate of a cow to 20 acres, just say. And right now you can only run a cow to 10 because you've got so much brush encroachment and you don't have enough cross fences, so you can't rotate your pastures to allow them rest periods. You don't have water in the right places
rest periods
to be able
important
to do that.
For erosion, seed recruitment, all that.
Yeah. So if you think about how this land evolved over time before the Anglo-American came in here and fenced it and changed it, it was grazed primarily by buffalo herds. Yeah. Because your buffalo herd was the grass-eating species, and elk in the northern plains some, but your deer, they don't utilize grass. They utilize forbs and they utilize shrubby plants, that kind of thing. So your buffalo would come through here and they would graze it, and they would graze it hard, and they would trample, and they would poop all over it.
Flash graze.
Yeah, flash graze. And they would come in there, and grass that was waist high 3 days later would be just down to nothing. But then they were gone for maybe 9 months or a year before they came back again. And they probably didn't come back at the same time of year. And so those rest periods are so important for that grass, because that's how it evolved naturally. And so that's what rotational grazing allows you to do, is to graze it and then get off of it, and then graze it and get off of it. And so that's the kind of thing that NRCS can help you do as far as putting a plan together for the property. And then based on what you're trying to do with the place, because the cow man's going to have a different goal than the wildlife man. And then they can say, okay, based on your goals and the resource concerns we identify on the place that are limiting your ability to reach your goals, or limiting the ability of the land to help you achieve those goals, here's the practices we recommend. And then at that point, there could be some cost share available to help you, and call it a cost share, call it a grant. It's kind of the same thing. They have basically practices that they then on a county level figure out, okay, on average, it costs this much to clear heavy brush. It costs this much to build a cross fence. It costs this much to plant grass. And we will pay a portion of that to help you achieve that goal. So you go out, you put your plan together, you get a contract, then you go out and do the work, and then they'll reimburse you, if you've done a good job and it meets their specifications, which are not crazy specifications, because what you've got to remember is these are everybody's tax dollars going onto that piece of property. Yeah. And so it's their job to be a steward of those tax dollars and make sure they're put to good use. And, guys I know at the local level work really hard to do that. And you put a long-term plan together and can achieve some great things on a property that maybe might have been just out of reach without their help.
What cost share programs do you see landowners most often underutilizing?
So the big one in this part of the world, Central Texas, is going to be the EQIP program. That's kind of been the bread and butter of NRCS for quite a few years. And that goes back.
That's an acronym.
EQIP. Yes, EQIP. Yeah. Sorry, it stands for Environmental Quality Incentive Program, and there's been a form of that for 50 years. There was an old program called the Great Plains Program, or GP, and it morphed into the EQIP program, and it's actually kind of moving back towards the Great Plains program, which was more management focused. It's not a vending machine where you come up there and say, I want a fence and I want some brush, and okay, here you go, here's the money, let's go. Mm-hmm. They're trying to get back to a whole, I guess you would call it a holistic, whole ranch, whole farm plan, so that those dollars are responsibly used and have a long-term return on the government's investment in the property. The government, for like the EQIP program, there's no easement involved or anything like that. Long-term, they don't hold the right to do anything to your property because of the program. You do agree to allow them to come out and make sure that you're doing a good job, that you don't, say your place can hold 20 cows, that after the EQIP program, you don't decide to turn it into a feedlot and stomp out all the grass that they helped you put in, and that kind of thing. And there again, that's just them trying to be good stewards of the tax dollars. Mm-hmm. And so what it does create is a long-term relationship with that NRCS office where they can be a resource for anything out there, talking about brush, because you get beyond you go in and do the big project, you get the bulldozer in there, you push the mesquite trees, you grub the juniper trees, you plant the grass. Well, what do big mesquite trees and big juniper trees do? They make seed. What does that seed do? It still wants to come up. And so just because you cleared it once doesn't mean it's gone forever. And so that's where that technical guidance from them can come in and just help you continue to manage that resource base, and so you don't get in that position again.
Doge cut the crap out of NRCS cost share programs, didn't they? When Elon was in there?
They kind of froze everything. They didn't necessarily cut it, they froze it. They did really cut pretty deep into staffing.
Yeah.
That's still going on. Actually, I was talking to some guys today. They're still offering some early retirement type stuff. So it's been a transition period.
The agency probably got fat, though. The agency could have got a little fat where not as many dollars hitting the ground.
It's the government, right? Maybe a little bit. That's tough.
It is tough. If somebody listening was affected by that, I'm not trying to be, too coarse there or non-caring, but.
Well, I think we can agree that most every government agency's had some times like that where they're out of self-preservation or whatever it is that things get a little fat, no doubt. But yeah, been a big transition period for them. I think they're kind of starting to get back to normal and not worried about their jobs so much and can focus on getting some good work done.
Wasn't every cost share program, what I was told is when Doge came in, every cost share program that wasn't already vested was put on hold or retracted.
Correct. If the funds had not been allocated by the state office in that respective state, some of those contracts were basically voided.
Yeah.
That money had to be earmarked to that individual person. So yeah, there was definitely some disappointment there, and I think now they're getting to where they're being able to reallocate some of those and get things rolling again and kind of get back to business as usual. So
overall, I think it's a great program. It's to the government's benefit for you and I to be good stewards of the land.
Sure,
it's to the benefit of the future generations that will own this stuff. I think on average, there's been like 8 previous owners of every piece of land today in a chain of title. Some have had a lot more, some have had a lot less, but around eight previous owners in the state of Texas, each chain of title. So if you believe that to be true, our management today is going to impact future owners, future managers, and it's to the government's advantage to help us. If not, they've got to help pay to mitigate it later.
Sure.
Erosion issues and...
Well, we've been down that road. I mean, that's the Dust Bowl.
We've been down that. Yeah, we've been down that.
And,
Okay.
no different than you don't go buy a new truck and then just completely destroy it right off the bat, right?
Yeah.
You don't buy a house and just leave the doors open and, let it freeze in the winter and have water leaks everywhere. So it's the same with land. If you're going to own it, let's make it be what it can be, and have some return for you and conserve it and so you have something to show for it at the end of the day. It's an asset. It's not a liability. So don't treat it like a liability.
In your listing business, Josh, what's the average acreage size that you deal in?
Oh, probably 250 acres, something like that.
Yeah.
We have plenty of places larger than that, the 500 to 1,000, but it just depends on the county. Comanche County, for instance, has such a farming history. It's very, very fragmented into lots of small farms because there was a time when 120 acres was all you needed to make a living.
Yeah.
And
peanuts.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cotton
Too. Josh, if I own 250 acres in Comanche County, which is your average deal size, what are the top 3 things a seller should look at doing in advance of listing?
Access around the property is probably crucial. And that may just be as simple as going around it with a chainsaw and cleaning up roads where you can just get around the place. That's 100% the biggest turnoff to buyers. If you can't find your way around it and, you're riding on your side by side and you're constantly having to duck and dodge and limbs are slapping the side of the buggy and, that just takes all the fun out of it. Right. And, you want to make sure that you clear places that accentuate the highlights of the property. If there's a spot that's got a great view, if there's a really pretty pond, we'll spend a little time and get, clean up around those spots where you can access them and appreciate them. Utilities like electricity and water are big. Maybe you don't go drill the water well, but you at least get some info from a well driller and have access and say, look, we talked to this guy. Water in this area is around this deep. That means a well is going to cost you about that much. Because a lot of people, there again, we talked about this earlier, it's a big investment, not just the property, but being able to do something with it and make sure, especially if hey, a water well is only going to be 120 feet deep. It's not going to cost that much money. Well, then, that's some legwork that can be done to improve a place. Brush work is always good. There again, I would say you can spend a few $1,000s and make a drastic change on a property.
Yeah.
As far as just cleaning up a few key areas and helping someone see the potential of what a place could be if it is kind of rough.
Yeah.
You don't have to go spend $100,000 cleaning up the whole thing. Just give them a tease and say, here's what it could be.
Yeah. Something that makes us unique here at the Mock Ranches Group is we have our sister company, Texas Land and Wildlife. You've utilized that tool a lot for your sellers. Pre-market staging. So how important is staging for a ranch?
Well, and that goes back into what we were just talking about, really. Just a couple days with a skid steer mulcher can go in and open a place up. And, I had a piece of property, 220 acres, and it was just kind of difficult to get around. You had a couple roads, but you really couldn't get a feel for what the place had. And got them out there and they spent a couple days and, just made it like a different place.
Yeah.
And so, and there again, we're just talking about a couple days of work.
Yeah.
$3,000-$4,000.
You've had some sellers do our program where we'll work with them on the front end to do the work and they can pay at close too.
Mm-hmm.
Like a residential staging company would do. We just do that for ranch owners.
Yeah.
And their return on that investment is exponentially high.
Oh yeah. I mean, because like I said, we're talking about $3,000 or $4,000. We're not talking about 30 or 40 even.
Yeah.
But just being able to get around
make a ranch bring another 100.
Yeah. I mean, $4,000 over 220 acres is dollars out to nothing.
Yeah.
And if you only got to get another $100 an acre for it, and you've done drastically better.
Yes, sir.
So yeah, pretty easy return there. And not every place needs that, but access is crucial.
Yeah. Josh, where's the market right now in North Texas that say a DFW based buyer should be looking today if they want to build a, recreational legacy ranch for their family? Run a few cows, do a little hunting, do a little fishing.
Man, we're right here in the middle of it, I would say. If you want to be as close as possible to the Metroplex, I would say Erath County is a great spot. If you're willing to push out a little further, Comanche County, Eastland County, Mills County are all really strong places. And, you can get a little more for your money if you push to the Eastland, Comanche, Mills area. And so they're still productive properties. So you can run a few cows, but they've got great wildlife populations. You're not going to shoot a 190-inch South Texas type deer on them, of course, unless you high fenced it and managed for it. But
there are some deer that big almost every year, free range deer that come out of Erath County.
It's crazy, isn't it?
There are Boone and Crockett bucks killed almost every year, free range in Erath County.
Yeah. And I don't know how to explain it. I mean, they're generally non-typical.
Yeah, generally non-typical.
They were smart.
Yeah.
They were smart. But you're right. Yeah, you get that around here for sure. Our average deer, and, with some good management, some good, if you're a part of a wildlife management co-op and everyone's willing to kind of manage, and, we've got antler restrictions also, but, you can have a lot of deer in the, good bucks in the 140s to 150-inch range. Mm-hmm. Just a good solid deer, that any grandkid would be super excited to shoot, right? And that's...
Yeah, we live on 40 acres south of Stephenville, where our home place is, and my son's killed a deer there that's almost 150 inches, non-typical, and he's killed a big 9-point buck that was like upper 130s, 140 kind of a buck right there on 40 acres.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know of two killed just a few miles north of Comanche that are in that 160 range last year, just 3 or 4 miles north of town.
Guys drive a long ways to South Texas to kill those deer.
That's true. These deer are few and far between, no doubt about it. But there's a good, healthy population of deer. Tons of turkeys. Good dove hunting.
Yeah,
we can get some good duck hunting seasonally. Just a good, well-rounded kind of place. There again, you've got the opportunity to have a good piece of water where you can fish. Whether it's a catfish pond or you want to manage it intensively and pull 5-pound plus pound bass out of it. You've got that ability and opportunity. So, this is a great area. Great area.
What are you excited about for this year, Josh?
Some normalcy in the market, maybe. We don't need boom, just consistency, I feel like. And I think we're getting there. I think we're getting realistic buyers, realistic sellers with realistic goals. A year and a half ago, we were seeing massive gaps between advertised price and what it actually finally sold for, and long days on market. And, it was just it's just inconsistent. And I think everybody's kind of settling back into normal now, and we can get back into people kind of on the same page and wanting to do business.
Yeah. I looked at a market report last week when we were in Atlanta, and it said in the month of December to January, 80% of properties that sold for less than list price, and 65% of properties on the market had price reductions. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like on a local level, we're maybe doing a little better than that. As far as the price reductions, I think we're seeing some return to normalcy. And it's been hard as an agent, to really pinpoint a place. Sometimes
it's tough to navigate that.
Yeah. You've got that, and then you've got the emotions of that seller. And
have you seen the economies of scale in reverse? Where bigger properties in North Texas, there's just not that many big ranches left. So have you seen where those bigger ranches demand a premium just because it's hard to find one? Whereas you would think ordinarily the smaller you make one, the more it's worth per acre. And that's still true down to really small acres. But it appears to me that we've seen the big ranch market be actually the strongest part of the market.
I think in areas, you're definitely headed that way. By the time you get to Erath County, Palo Pinto County, you're an hour from the Metroplex. I think that's 100% true. Yeah, there's no discount for large acreage. You push further west, there's probably still a little bit of one, but not like there used to be. It used to be, 1,000 acres would sell for, 20% of what 100 acres would sell for almost, and there's not that much difference anymore. There's not that much difference.
Got it. Well, Josh, I appreciate you very much. Always enjoy learning from you. Appreciate working with you. If you guys need something in North Texas, get hold of Josh Deal on the main Dragon Comanche. Or you can come see us right here on South Graham Street in Stephenville. We're right between T2Go and Rodeo Grounds. You can get your caffeine fix on either side of us. Come in here and talk real estate. Yeah. Thanks, Josh. Appreciate you coming by.
Yeah.
Bye, everybody. Enjoyed it.
That wraps us up. I appreciate you listening to the Landowner Insider. If you found this episode helpful, be sure to follow the show, leave us a review, and share it with another Texas landowner. For more insights, listings, and resources for Texas landowners, visit mockranches.com. Till next time, I'm Kasey Mock, your host. This has been the Landowner Insider. Go get 'em.